Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Mini Metro. This time this will be another Thames Tunnel achievement run, even though I know I probably said in the past Thames Tunnel video that that it was probably close enough, and I sort of decided back then that it would be good enough for a video on its own, but I completely forgot when I was doing it because basically when I'm attempting these achievement runs, it's I just basically open up the achievement sheet on my. I've actually got this game on GOG instead of Steam, so let's see, the achievement set is a bit different. So the Thames Tunnel achievement is deliver 1,000 passengers in London using no more than one tunnel. So that's so I will probably be repeating some of the same things as I said in the previous video, but nevertheless, I think since I don't actually remember them, it actually be a nice way for me to refresh my thoughts and just to really just think through the whole thing once again, which is because for me I always enjoy a bit of mental exercise. So the major thing about just having one tunnel is that basically means there's only going to be one means of transport between two different pieces of land. So the main or the key strategy, in my opinion, is to keep the train line that has the tunnel fairly short, because ultimately when all the lines get much more complicated, you basically want that one train to constantly be ferrying passengers across the river, and to do that efficiently, you must keep the line short. So with that, I've just reduced the orange line just for it to be crossing between two stations, and I'm keeping all the activity on the other lines. So we've got a nice loop there. Well, I wouldn't say nice, but it's definitely a loop of some sort. And I've got a and I've just been pretty much covering the other stations with the other two blue lines. I've actually been playing a lot off camera, especially with some of the other achievements. Some of them are just so freaking hard. Some of them just makes me want to tear my hair out, and others are just, it's like, why do you screw me over? Why do you screw me over with this ridiculous RNG? But I do hope to satisfactorily complete all the achievements, and even though, especially the ones that I liked it well enough to sort of think, okay, that would do for now, but I think for the sake of completeness, it would be nice to try and achieve all of them, because I think the level of difficulty that these achievements aim for is for me, it's the right amount. It's not overly difficult / impossible. It like all the achievements to feel like they're really pretty much doable. So yeah, so I'll definitely be giving the rest of the achievements a go, and it will certainly be a lot of fun. So with the end of this week, it's obvious that since we could only use one tunnel, that at the end of each week, if we're giving a tunnel option, we may as well pick the other option, because we're not going to use any more tunnels than what we have right now. So looks like we're keeping the blue and the yellow line stretched out, fairly straightforward, and the light blue line at the bottom is, well, kind of minding its own business, while the top end just gets all busy. So, and but definitely the lack of lines is starting to be a little hurtful on our system, and especially when we have a weird loop on the dark blue line in the top left, especially with a bunch of circle stations close together. The yellow line also seems to have the same problem with a bunch of triangle stations on the left component, and it would be nice to eventually be able to separate, once we get more lines, to sort of just redistribute the stations such that we can get some of the more stations on the right just to be what do I want to say? Just to be, well, basically, we can see now that there are two square stations, and since square stations tend to be a bit rarer, like what one might want to do is sort of like reallocate some of the lines such that they go to separate square stations rather than having the two square stations linked on the same line. So that's definitely one thing to keep in mind, especially when you're thinking about distributions of stations. And we might say that definitely the left side of the yellow and the blue could maybe be rearranged so that I could mix some of the circle stations with the triangle stations. So it's the end of another week, and you obviously saw that there was a tunnel option, so it was natural for me to pick the other. And like I said before, there was about sort of reordering the lines to make use of the second square station. You can see that I put in the green line there, and I readjusted the orange line to match, and I've split the yellow, and I've split. I put the I put the yellow and the blue line on separate square stations, and since I've added the green line, I'm taking that as an opportunity to sort of move the blue line a little, because now adding the green line means that some of the stations previously on the dark blue line can be relieved of their commitment. I like how I always have different ways of saying things, but I'm sure you understand what I mean. So I mean for now, in general, I don't think this achievement is a particularly difficult one, especially if you just keep the main thing in mind, to keep the line with the one tunnel short, and to make sure that you're sort of correctly distributing the key stations, because definitely the one thing that can be a cause of worry for the time being is the yellow. So on the yellow line, you can see there's a diamond station on the right, and the line itself is fairly long and has to stretch out to accommodate that station down in, maybe, I don't know what to call it, a peninsula or delta, but definitely the circle station in that little jutting out area before the river is definitely extending the yellow line a fair amount more than I am comfortable with, basically. So with the interchange, that's actually something very useful you can have for it's something that is extremely useful for this kind of achievement, because basically in terms of using it with the line that is ferrying passengers across the river, what you want to do, well, basically the interchange will help you hold some of the customers moving there, but at the same time, it's the faster loading and unloading definitely helps. So the little circle station in the bottom right corner is being really annoying, and of course a teardrop or raindrop station. I'm not quite sure what to call it. I think I call it a teardrop station. That's really not much of a concern at the moment, since we've got the yellow and green lines running through it, but definitely the circle station in the bottom right is certainly a cause for concern, and since we can only use one tunnel, you can see me just sort of like trying to figure out what the heck I should do. And so I think, yeah, that was my solution, and it's sort of something I've been eventually juggling, especially in some of the other achievements. When I'm restricted on tunnels, I just end up taking the one line with the tunnel and just sort of juggling things around until a station spawns that allows me to fix that problem. So yeah, this part is a bit annoying, but it's definitely falls under sort of some of the micromanagement that you will need to do in order to deal with these kind of pressure situations. So here, what did I pick in the week 6? Line or carriage? I think... Okay, so I went for a line, although I think either one could have worked, but I think the line may have been the better option. Mainly because the green and the dark blue lines and the yellow line are both fairly stretched, so having the additional line will help relieve some of the pressure happening, and I can definitely use the extra line to sort of deal with some of these. So that's exactly what I'm doing here at the moment. After retracting the orange line back to the initial state, I've got the pink line just helping out with some of the more busier, some of the more currently congested areas happening on the green and blue line, which is basically happening since I don't really have enough locomotives to deal with it just yet. Thankfully, the isolated circle station in the bottom right does not really seem to be causing me too much trouble, but, well, at least not to the point that is making me think, oh god, this is so annoying, this is so frustrating. So it's, in my opinion, it's fairly manageable, and I think it's dealing with it is actually made easier by the fact that I've only got one tunnel. So it basically means that the only line that I really need to adjust to deal with it is the line with the tunnel. So until another station that until another station spawns that allows us to use the light blue line to deal with that little pesky isolated station, we've got a pretty easy fix as long as everything else is fine and dandy. So you can see I've attached the orange line to the teardrop station, and we've got another pesky isolated station, which I'm just obviously at the time getting a bit annoyed, but what can you do? So, and then it looks like I'm getting a little bit mixed up with my orange line, but obviously I'm sort of just retracting things back because the light blue line is getting a bit crowded, but thankfully we can see a station spawning on the bottom left, maybe bottom middle, that will allow the light blue line to take on a few more duties, as we might say, because it's been sitting on 3 stations for quite a while, and certainly when we extend it to the isolated station in the bottom right, it will be busy enough. So we've got another square station. We've got another square station spawning on the right, and it's the end of another week in which picking the carriage is the obvious choice, since the other choice was the tunnels. And so, now what was I thinking here? I don't actually quite remember, so I will just keep talking until I watch myself do something. And so with that, extending the dark blue line to the square station sort of makes sense here, because it's sort of in its own isolated area, and with the square station in the middle, and since the blue, I guess to me it makes sense at the time, although like right now I mean, if it's not obvious already, I'm sort of doing this post commentary and I'm just watching back the recording on my video while doing my commentating. So yeah, it's hopefully some of my thought patterns still remain the same, but otherwise I don't exactly remember minute by minute what I was thinking at those particular moments. So yeah, that square station on the end on the right for the dark blue line makes sense to me, and thankfully we've got the triangle station spawning at the bottom middle, which allows us to use the light blue line which allows us to give more duties to the light blue line. So as you can see now, I've got my plan pretty much in action, in the sense that I've got the orange line ferrying passengers from the light blue line to the main one, and also just now the orange train just dropped off a whole bunch of square customers to the square interchange, and that's one of the best things about the interchange and using them on key stations which sort of act like central hubs. They really allow you to drop off they really allow the trains to drop off the passengers immediately. So in that case, it's very, very useful. Just added another train to the dark blue line just to deal with the congestion happening on the right, and I gotta say, I think I'm doing well. I know I'm doing pretty well. I shouldn't say I think. Well, definitely in the time if I was commentating while playing this, I'll be saying I think, but since I know that this achievement was successful, is obviously I know I did pretty well, in my opinion. So here I'm sort of deciding between another line or interchange, and from memory I opted for the interchange, mainly... Did I? Okay, I don't remember. Yes, that's right. Now that one was I guess not so much a clearer choice. That one was in my head, was at the time was a bit more questionable, but I think it's mainly because if we look at the light blue line, we already see circle and triangle stations. That means there's gonna be a lot of different customers, especially for the other unique stations that are gonna be dumped at that triangle station in order for them to be ferried across the orange line to the other side of the river. So for me, it makes sense to have the interchange there so that we can have a bigger capacity, basically a bigger capacity, so that that station doesn't suffer from congestion issues and, you know, the usual stuff that makes us lose the game. So yeah, the interchange there made sense to me then. Obviously that would change if we had similar stations spawning down at the moment. So it's still sort of like trying to decide what to do more in terms of planning for the future. It's still not very clear cut. I mean, there are obvious things like maybe you want to get a couple of tunnels just to make sure that if a station spawns on another side of the river, you've got the tunnels to actually link a line there. But otherwise you can't really predict what you're going to get at the end of each week. So it's still in most of my runs of playing Mini Metro is still fairly reactionary. And I mean, there is a fair amount you can sort of anticipate just by looking at the layout of the stations and the layout of the lines, and with like, especially with keeping in mind things that I mentioned before, especially like if there is a bunch of stations of the same shape on one side, or the length of each station and how many locomotives there are at each station. It's obviously one of those things that you can imply and figure out what's gonna happen. So in choosing the extra line, and the last train line for this week, it's obvious. You can see that by applying it to the top right, it allows it to help out the blue line a little more, and maybe I might consider retracting the blue line a little just to hook into some more key and maybe more unique stations. I don't remember what I've done here, but we will probably observe. But with that, it should probably point out that I've already passed 1,000 and well on my way to hitting 1,500, and so that's pretty much the achievement done. So it's fairly obvious that you can sort of get beyond that a little more with a bit more insight and a bit more planning, but nevertheless, I think this is definitely one of the more easier achievements to do once you figure out the central strategy of keeping the line with the one tunnel fairly short, because as you can see, it's working out fairly well for me, and as long as I've got a very solid management of all the other stations, got a good idea of distribution, have my lines maybe some in loops, some just covering more key stations, and just basically sort of anticipating what might happen. So obviously here at the end of week, was it just week 10? I don't quite remember. Again, we had a tunnel choice, so we picked the other, and we can definitely see the light blue line at the bottom is getting fairly busy. So thankfully this is where the triangle intersection station comes in handy, because then all the trains can just easily dump all the customers there. And I don't think I'm gonna have much else to say about my setup. So I'm just scanning my thing just to see what might be happening, but I don't really see much that needs to be said. Everything seems to be working fine and dandy. I mean, there's another square station on the bottom right, but at this stage there's really I mean, there's not really much that can be said about it. I mean, it's not at the best point, it's not the worst point, and I've got enough trains moving around at the moment that can sort of adequately deal with it, in my opinion. And so I'm just looking at some of the unique stations as well. There's the Pentagon, which is connected by the pink and green line in the upper middle, and we're seeing a bit of congestion on the right on the blue line as well. End of week 10, so previous week was week 9, so I think the choice was fairly obvious there. And I opted to put my new acquisitions on the blue line just to help deal with the congestion that's happening. One of the interesting things I've noticed in terms of train behavior is that especially if you look through the blue line on the right, the dark blue line on the right, how the trains behave in terms of picking up the customers. So if the train was heading towards the end of the dark blue line on the right, it will pick up the square customers, and then you will go back to pick up the rest, instead of picking up the customers at the stations which are in trouble, like that one in the middle right that's pretty much going to cost us the game. So yeah, that's something I observed when I was playing off camera, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. So I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty happy with that. 2,262 passengers over 74 days, which is, yeah, over 10 weeks. So I gotta say, this was a fairly easy achievement to do, and well, you know, I just kept on playing. So hopefully this video was helpful, and with that, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next video.